Hey, hey, hey. How's it going? Brian Bowman here. Hope you're doing well. And today I want to consider the question, what advice would Mozart have for you and your business to help you grow your business? What would Beethoven and Bach say to help you grow your business? What would Picasso have shared with you? What insight would he have shared with you to help you grow your business? I've been reading about these guys lately, and one of my virtual mentor, someone that I suggest you study, you look into, is Charlie Munger. He's Warren Buffett's partner in Berkshire Hathaway. And he talks about learning from the eminent dead. That sounds a little morbid, but there is tons of lessons to be learned from the past, right? It's one of the reasons I love reading biographies. So these great people who've been before us, we can learn so much from them. So if we were to get advice from Mozart, what would he have said? So I have no idea, to be honest. I have no idea what advice he would have given you. But if we look at what they did, what Mozart and Beethoven and Bach and Picasso did, what could we learn from them that could be applied? And I think there's a huge lesson here. There's two huge takeaways I want to share with you. So one thing that I read, which was pretty cool, is the London Philharmonic seemed like they would know a thing or two about classical music. They lined up their 50 greatest pieces, classical music pieces from all of history, from all artists, and they listed them from top to bottom. Of those 50, Mozart had 6 of them, Beethoven had 5, and Bach had 3. Okay, of the 50 greatest pieces ever composed. But do you have any idea how many pieces Mozart created? And he actually passed pretty early. I mean, he died pretty early. Do you have any idea how many pieces he created? He created a bit over 600 different pieces. Beethoven created over 650, and Bach, we think of Bach as like one of the greatest, right? In the top 50, he had 3 of those spots. He created over 1,000 pieces of music. You look at Picasso. Picasso has thousands of different sculptures and tapestries and rugs and all these things he created. He had over 12,000 drawings that he painted. Yet only a handful are considered, magnificent and received all the acclaim. So, we've heard stories about Edison, right? All the different patents that he filed, and whether he filed them or his room full of assistants. I read about how we have this idea of Edison kind of being this mad scientist working in a lab by himself, and it was that's actually very far from the truth. He actually had a team of engineers and a team of inventors, and he was more of a CEO than anything, and they were cranking out patents like crazy, and he was filing these things. I mean, he had hundreds of patents that he had filed to get, the 2 or 3 that we really know him for. So there's 2 critical insights here. One is pretty obvious, I think, which is action, and not just action, but massive, massive action. These are the greats. These are the people we consider the geniuses, right? That they were inspired by some other thing that, Mozart, at 3 years old is composing pieces. And, we think of them as the greats, prodigies. And here, look at how much they had to compose to be differentiated, to be considered one of the greats, right? And to have those pieces that go down in history. Picasso, again, greatest artist. Think of how much he had to produce. And this is universally what we find is when we study the greatest, quote unquote, most creative people, one thing that separates them from everyone else isn't quality in everything they do. It's just sheer quantity. It is cranking out content until those 1 or 2 hit. Okay. So that's the big takeaway. Number 1. And this is the advice that from their experience, I would like to think they would have given me and you, that Mozart and Beethoven and Bach and Picasso and Edison and all these greats would have given us. This is the advice. Stop worrying about quality every time. Focus on quantity. Take massive action and just crank it out and just get after it. I can tell you in my business, there was a period where I wanted there was this perfectionism, right? And as I started to let go of that, as I started to look around me, around my new peers, because I was always reaching up. When I made the decision that I was going to go full time into entrepreneurship and was going to leave my day job, I started reaching up wherever I could. And if I had to pay to get my way in, I did. But I wanted to surround myself with people who were doing it, they were they were manifesting the things I wanted in my life. And I paid attention. I took notes and I studied. And I can tell you universally, they all took massive action. It was just like, it's every single time. It's not just a few instances. The people who were crushing it were taking massive action. I said, you know what? I'm going to have success. I have to start taking this massive, just unreasonable amounts of action. And I started doing that, and then little by little, it's like compound interest. It starts to compound, and then that 1 out of 1,000 starts to pop up. That one thing where you find a signal, and all this noise that sometimes you feel like you're just creating, you're able to hit on it. So whether it's creating content for your e-commerce business to try to transition from content to sale, whether it's ads, my goodness, the variety of ads that we test. We literally will launch a campaign and have 1,200 ads running at once. We will launch 200 ads at a time, different variations of creative and copy and audiences that we target. I mean, we launch so much stuff, and we really don't know what's going to work. And that's the second piece of this. And you look at the same thing, even with the greats. So a lot of what we think is genius or ability or talent, a lot of it's just hard work and cranking out content, cranking out, producing and just letting the chips fall, letting the dust settle and see what happens. So massive, massive action. If you're looking at what products to launch, pull your audiences, get a few, get tons of samples and start testing it. I talk about doing things that don't scale. Go to a flea market, get a bunch of samples, start selling, talk to the people. What's the feedback? You've got to test a bunch of different things. So this is in every part of your business. It doesn't matter which part specifically. Massive action. We have to go out there. We have to create our 600 or our 1,000 plus pieces, our 12,000 paintings, our 2,800 sculptures. Like, we have to do this. And the second piece of this, which is fascinating, and it's, kind of the hidden benefit of knowing this, is they didn't know what was going to work. So not only do we have to take massive action, and it truly is quantity over quality. It's good to focus on quality. We have to do that because we have to always keep in mind, like, how are we going to cut through the noise? We don't just want to shout louder, right? We have to have a signal. We have to have something that resonates. So quality matters, but quantity matters so much more. But the other piece is there's an element of randomness. We don't know what's going to work. We don't know what's going to hit. And if you look at these, you look at Beethoven, when he was asked, I think he ranks in his journal, he ranks what he believes are his best pieces. None of them are considered any of the great pieces that he wrote. None of them. Shakespeare, I believe the same thing with Shakespeare. Of all the sonnets, of all the poems that he wrote, the ones that, and there's so many of them that weren't big hits. There's one, All's Well That Ends Well, I believe. It was like a flop, essentially, compared to the great things that he wrote. He would have ranked his pieces in different order of greatness. So the whole point is, even at the moment, while it's happening, while these geniuses are creating these things that are going to change history and leave an indelible mark, even while they're doing it, they didn't know which were the pieces that were going to be great, which were the things that they were going to create that were going to be great. There's an element of randomness, and that's even more why we have to take massive action. Nassim Nicholas Taleb talks about fooled by randomness. He talks about being anti-fragile. He talks about the black swan. If you read any of his books, they're very, it's very intellectual stuff. Like, it takes time. You got to go through it. You got to digest it slowly. But there's this overarching theme that he's talking about, which is there's this huge element of randomness in life. And the only way we overcome that randomness is massive action. Obviously, we want to get as close to the starting block as possible. So there is benefit in educating ourselves, in investing in ourselves, in surrounding ourselves with the right people, with having the right influences, with listening to hopefully things like this that get you centered in the right direction so that you're moving with momentum in the right direction. But still, at the end of the day, moving. Like, there has to be massive action. And knowing that there's a huge element of randomness involved, and we're just not going to know, even while we're producing it, that this is the thing. Look at the Segway. The Segway, everyone bet on the Segway. If you read the story about the Segway, it's crazy. Like, investors like Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, I think one of the co-founders of Google, like, they invested, I think Jobs invested like $85 million in the Segway. And the guy who invented the Segway, he had this crazy track record of success, like massive success. I mean, the guy was a multimillionaire. He had a team of engineers working on different things, kind of like an Edison type situation, right? And this thing was supposed to change the world. It was supposed to sell 10,000 units a week. The thing sold, I think, 50,000 the first 6 months. And now just has this niche market that it serves. But they thought it was going to be this great thing. These geniuses, right? These brilliant, brilliant people thought it was going to be a sure hit. And it was a complete flop. I mean, it's considered one of the biggest, while it still was, it had its place, realistically, compared to the expectation, it was one of the biggest tech flops ever. So it just goes to show that we don't know what's going to really take off, what's going to hit. Anyone who's had a viral video will tell you, like, when the thing hit, bam, it just hit. A viral post, a viral product. I can tell you with us, our first product line, we just kind of randomly stumbled on a product about our third or fourth product in, and it just took off. Like, we could not believe it. You just don't know what it's going to be. So massive action, obviously with quality, that matters. But once you get aligned with some degree of quality, which, by the way, nowadays is not that hard to do because so many people are kind of firing from the hip randomly. They're not taking, intelligent, purposeful action, being intentional, right? That's where the quality is, being intentional about what you're doing, not just putting out 500 pieces of crap, variations out there, but following your 5 propositions, following your 4 intangibles of value creation, following, understanding your points of differentiation in the market, understanding social proof, like all the things that we talk about, you align that. But now, after you have that aligned, you've taken yourself closer to the finish line, right? Because your starting block is now so much further ahead. But now that you're there, now it's just massive, massive action, and you go and you go and you go. And even in the moment of creating it, you don't even know what's going to hit. And that's kind of the beauty of it, and that's the thing that gives you that thrill. Because when it hits, man, it takes off and it feels amazing. So take that lesson. I know for me, this is such a huge thing that I remind myself of is learn from these guys, from the eminent dead, right? Learn the lessons from the greats, take massive action, and know that there's just so much randomness. I don't know what's going to hit, but I know one of them will, because I'm going to keep going and going and going until it does. So go ahead, go take massive action, and let your hit come out all on its own, because you combined quality and quantity and just got after it. So have an amazing, amazing rest of your day. Appreciate you. Bye.